Again, for those of you that have already heard me say, I'll say one more time, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We know that this comes at the end of what was probably a busy work day. It certainly was for us in the MBA program as the application process starts to sort of ramp up here in admissions. So we thank you for spending part of your evening with us and hope this is going to be a great session for you tonight. I think the best place to always start is with introductions, and I'll begin and then I'll turn it over to my colleague Wendy. I'm Joanne Legler, the Director of Admissions for the MBA for Executives program at Yale SOM. Welcome to our webinar tonight. Wendy, you want to say hello?
Hi everyone, my name is Wendy Sung and I serve as the Assistant Dean of the MBA for Executives program. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm glad that you're making this investment in yourself to consider furthering your education and learning more about Yale School of Management.
Thank you, Wendy. It's so nice to have you with me tonight. And we're also joined by our colleague, Alexandra Rhodes, who's making sure everything is running smoothly on the back end. If you have any questions for us, which we hope you do, this is a Q&A webinar. We hope that you'll use the Q&A feature to go ahead and throw that in there. Alexandra can help us on the back end, help moderate some questions. We'll leave the Q&A towards the end, but we're really happy to hear what you have to say, and we're excited to be as helpful as possible for you guys tonight. So once again, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. So we'll go ahead and kind of introduce you to what our agenda is going to be tonight. But the first thing I want to show you is this great picture of Sterling Library at Yale University. I think one of the most awesome things about being a student at the School of Management is that you are also a student of Yale University, one of the most storied and historic institutions in the United States. I love this picture of Sterling Library, one of the most historic and beautiful buildings on campus. I hope you'll have a chance to visit one of these days. And in fact, if you follow Yale University on Instagram, you might check out a different picture of Sterling Library. They have definitely sort of set it up for social distancing. So this room actually looks a bit different if you see their Instagram lately to make room for social distancing while our students are here back on campus. But if you do ever get a chance to visit the university, it is a tourist destination in and of itself. I hope you'll be able to have an opportunity to check this out. And in the before times, and hopefully in the future times, we'd like to invite you to Evans Hall, which is the home of the School of Management, built back in 2014. And the contrast is really clear. While Yale is quite old, it brings to us a number of Nobel Prize winners and Oscar winners, presidents, Supreme Court justices. By contrast, the School of Management is one of the youngest professional and graduate programs on the Yale University campus, dating all the way back to the mid-70s. But by contrast from that, our building is actually really new. And as you can see, almost entirely made of glass, which really reflects the ethos of transparency that we teach with at the School of Management and trying to be transparent in everything that we do in business. So we're lucky to be in this space. We have quickly nearly outgrown it in just a short period of time. And if we have an opportunity to invite you to campus, we hope that you'll come and check it out in person for yourself. In the meantime, and for tonight, we're going to go through about 45 minutes worth of an agenda. We're going to start with a quick introduction to our mission at the School of Management and our community, give you the briefest of overviews of the MBA for Executives program, go through an admissions overview, and then hopefully really spend the bulk of our time together doing Q&A. We're hopeful that you will come with your questions, or perhaps will inspire and spark some of them as we go through our presentation together. But we truly did mean for this webinar to be all about you and answering any questions that you have, whether it's about our program, our alumni, our students, our building, or maybe more importantly, depending on where you are in your MBA journey, our admissions process. Our round one deadline is right around the corner. With that, I always think that a great place to start a discussion about the School of Management is to start with our mission. As you can see here from this slide, our mission is to educate leaders for business and society. And this mission is our founding mission. It's been something that's been with us since the beginning days of the School of Management. And it really drives everything that we do. It's central to everything that we do. So I think if you were to ask any of our students, staff, or faculty, they can all probably rattle it off with relative ease. It's sort of ingrained in everything that we do. And for us, not only does it help drive decisions on a day-to-day basis, but it also provides a foundation for who we are as an institution and how we make longer-term decisions and who we are as a community. Hopefully this mission resonates with you. For some, it may be the first time you're hearing it. For others, it may be something that's quite central to your understanding of the School of Management. And I really like to quote one of our former deputy deans who says that the most important words in our mission are the small ones: to, for, and. And we really do think about that and part quite seriously, making sure that we are educating leaders who are not only thinking about what they do on a day-to-day basis, but also think very broadly about their role in the larger society and come with a really strong sense of purpose about what they do and the impact that they want to make in their organizations or teams, or perhaps even more broadly in their cities, states, or maybe even globally. Another huge sort of tenet to what we do at the School of Management and the MBA for Executives program specifically is a strong sense of community. I have a colleague who put these slides together and called it community on purpose. That's us in admissions, putting together our community very purposefully from year to year. But also I think of it as a community of purpose, and that harkens back to our mission that we just talked about a minute ago. However, as seriously as we take all of this, as you can see, we also do try to have some fun. I would use a ton of words to describe our community. I think that they are engaged. I think they're also engaging. Similarly, I find them inspiring, but also inspired by their faculty, by their classmates, hopefully by us as staff members as well. I think they're very non-transactional. I think this is a group that intends to be fully engaged in the process. This is not the type of program for them to sort of come, sit in on class, turn around and leave and think nothing of the School of Management after that, but instead, for us, this is really taking a big step into being part of a community that is quite purposeful in everything that they do while they're with us and beyond. The last photo in this sort of series here is a little, keep on calling it post-apocalyptic, and I certainly don't mean it in that way. I actually think it's a really cool photo, and I think it shows so much about our community in one really powerful image. Number one, we were able to bring the class of 2022 to campus in person on time to start the program this past July. Secondly, you can see that we adhere to all safety and health measures that the university and the state of Connecticut has put forth, including social distancing and the wearing of masks to keep each other safe and healthy. And it really says a lot, I think, about how much our students respect and care for one another, that they're taking every precaution to not only come back and be with each other in person to learn and to grow, but to also have enough respect for their fellow classmates to adhere to these social distancing and health and safety guidelines. So we're not sure how much longer we're going to be able to use this outdoor space for these great pictures, but we have been very grateful to our community at SOM and to the university for allowing us to come back to campus on time and in person to deliver our content. Many of our students are also participating remotely. If you have any questions about that, I'm more than happy to answer those at that time when we have Q&A. All right, so that's the briefest of overviews of our program. I truly encourage you to head back to our website if all of this is sort of new for you. Definitely more webinars that we've done, recorded and posted to our website that talk even more about our community. There's a great alumni webinar we did recently. We've done information sessions that go deeper into our mission and our community. But for right now, it's probably a great time to stop and sort of go back and get the basics of the program. If this is your first webinar with us, your introduction to the School of Management, maybe you want to know a little bit more about the logistics and how this all works. So I'm going to turn it over to Wendy as our Assistant Dean to talk a little bit more about the structure and the curriculum of our program before we go to talk about admissions. So Wendy, I'm going to leave it to you to talk about the next few slides.
Great, thank you so much, Joanne. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the program and how you would move through your 22 months in the program. The program is every other weekend on Friday and Saturday, with just a couple of 3-day weekends throughout your 2 years. The program kicks off with a 2-week residency in July, a 1-week global trip in June at the end of your first year, followed by another week of residency to start off your second year. So in total, 4 residency weeks and your class weekends, which equates to roughly 60 days out of the office. This is an in-person program, but we're not when we're not in a global pandemic, but there are options to participate remotely. So on the next slide, I'll just go through briefly what a sample class weekend looks like. It's very full and quite structured in that classes begin on Friday at 9 a.m. and ends at 5:30. And it starts back up again on Saturday at 8 a.m. And runs until 3 p.m. But you'll see every Friday, we have time for colloquium, which is an area of focus speaker series that occurs on Fridays. And after class each day on Fridays and Saturdays, you have the option to participate in various activities. So because our students travel in, we want them to feel very connected with the university and get the best out of their time at Yale. And so on Friday nights, we'll host optional activities that allows you to go across campus and get to know the university. An example is the Beinecke Rare Books and Manuscript Library, which we've visited with our students before. We might go to a hockey game or tour the Peabody Museum or hike up Harkness Towers. So there's a plethora of things that you can do to get to know the university. On Saturdays, we'll typically have workshops after the end of your classes. And these are workshops that help, that are of topics that we think would be interesting to you, such as a workshop on emotional intelligence or speaking up without freaking out, things like that that we think would be extremely beneficial for our students. You'll notice we start Friday at 9 a.m., but we end early on Saturday at 3 p.m. And that's because we want to allow for travel time. We're quite well located, I think, in that on the next slide, you'll see that we're between Boston and New York. And we're about an hour and a half to 2 hours from both locations. We're also very easily accessible by train from DC, Philly, other places. But many of our students come in from outside of the Northeast. And there are quite a few airports nearby that students can fly into. I think we have about over 25% of our students who fly in for class weekends. And we also have students who fly in who are international, but primarily in North America or South America that fly into the program. So for those of you who are unable to make travel to class, to be in class in person, we also have what we call the extended classroom. And this is a technology that we've had in place for several years. It allows our students to participate remotely when work or weather or life events makes it difficult to travel to New Haven. And it's really our experience with this technology and the support that we have, the wonderful support that we have through our IT and media services, that's made this possible for our students. And it's what allowed us to continue the spring semester when the COVID crisis first hit, to allow us to maintain our full and robust program for our current classes. So this is something that our students are using currently. It's doing really well, and our transition from in-person to online was extremely smooth. In the next slide, here's a really good visual representation of what your 2 years at SOM might look like. The academic experience is 75% general management and 25% focused on either healthcare, asset management, or sustainability. The curriculum for the first year is an integrated core curriculum, and I'll come back to that in just a little bit. At the end of the first year, you'll have a global network week where you'll be able to select from a variety of options around the world. And then you start your second year in your focus area courses, and then really come back together as a class to wrap up with your advanced management courses. Throughout your 2 years, you'll engage in leadership development through a curriculum of mandatory core courses, coupled with optional sessions on leadership topics and hands-on training workshops, which really allows you to build skills not only on the individual, team, and organizational level, but also with a global perspective. Throughout your 22 months, I think we've talked about the fact that you'll have the opportunity to hear from a suite of colloquium speakers curated by each of our area of focus faculty directors. These speakers really offer amazing insight into leadership of each industry, as well as challenges and opportunities in the industry. So the program's not for the faint of heart. It is rigorous, it's challenging, it's invigorating, it's intensive. And there are many other great words that I can use, but just to come back to sort of this integrated core curriculum that makes up the first year of our program. Our MBA for executive students take the same integrated core curriculum as our full-time program, along with advanced management courses that really build on the lessons of the core curriculum. The Yale Integrated Core Curriculum is really one of the most important differentiators of the program, and it's really how you begin your academic experience. It's uniquely taught through the organizational stakeholders lens rather than by function. You won't see courses like marketing or finance here. Rather, you'll see titles of the courses that represent the distinct stakeholders across an organization. We believe that if we're going to educate leaders for business and society, we must really be able to have leaders with a broad view and a deep understanding of their workforce, their customers, how to innovate and shift as markets do, really to understand how organizations create and change policy at all different levels, and how to think like an investor. This doesn't mean that you don't get the marketing and finance knowledge. In fact, let's take an example of sourcing and managing funds. This course is co-taught by our finance faculty and by our marketing faculty. Finance and accounting faculty. It covers functional areas such as accounting, finance, operations, strategy. These core courses are really linked together to form a seamless whole. Faculty who teach in the core work together, and sometimes will weave a single case study throughout multiple courses to demonstrate how a particular issue can really affect different aspects of an organization. And it can be viewed from different perspectives. This approach is probably more rigorous for both the faculty and the students, but it's also much better aligned with the real world. Another example of how we prepare students to sort of thrive in the real world is what we call our raw cases, which are written from a single perspective that's really used to illustrate a single point. We utilize traditional cases, but Yale also invested in a case writing team to develop what we call raw cases. So unlike sort of the fully cooked cases, which is illustrating one point, the raw cases give you much more information than you would ever need, pulling from videos and 10Ks and financial statements and things like that to teach you how to solve the problem utilizing current information and how to think more broadly about problems. As I said before, the curriculum is rigorous and intellectually challenging. And integrates the silos that's often found in business and business school curriculum into stakeholder perspectives. And I think it makes the learning process much more relevant and immediately applicable to your work. So our program is also unique in that it has 3 focus areas: asset management, healthcare, and sustainability. These are very distinct features of our second year curriculum for the program, as it makes up 25% of the overall curriculum. In the second year, students in each focus area do a deep dive into the courses that are relevant to that area. And our students, we curate the class with students who have really demonstrated commitment to one of these areas, so that as you do this deep dive. And as you build your network, you can really, really sort of elevate the level of conversation that occurs in each of these areas. So you might assume that our program in asset management really only serves those in the financial industry within the wealth management space. And that's partially true, but we also see a broad range of functional roles, people with leadership experiences and in various areas of expertise in areas like private equity and venture capital, traditional portfolio managers, in regulatory risk and compliance, fintech and consultancies. So it's quite broad, even though it's called asset management. The same is true for healthcare. You might think that the program is primarily for providers, which is where we started from. But it's also evolved to include those who are in biotech and big pharma and in insurance and medical devices, people who are focused on issues of population health and health equity. So it really runs the breadth of sort of the healthcare system and brings together students and people with backgrounds in all of these different areas to help solve complex healthcare problems. Sustainability is probably our broadest area because it applies to all different industries and sectors. And they're all aware of the importance of thinking about environmental impacts on their organizations and making positive change. And while we don't always see folks with titles like directors of sustainability or corporate social responsibility, as those are still relatively new, we're seeing more organizations leaning into these roles. So many of our students come from energy, oil and gas, consumer goods, supply chain, manufacturing, policy, government. So it's much broader in terms of industry and function. So that's kind of a quick dive into sort of the program and how it's structured. I'm going to pass it back to Joanne to talk a little bit more about sort of the process and what it looks like in the admissions process.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wendy. I'll just pause here to say if you do have questions for us, feel free to at any time put those in the Q&A. Our wonderful colleague Alexandra is on the back end. If there's something quick that she can answer, great. But for the benefit of all of our participants, we'll do our best to get through as many questions as we can. If you have it, somebody probably also has it as well. So don't be shy. Go ahead and put your questions into the Q&A at any point, but we will stop towards the end and leave you hopefully a good 15 minutes or so to ask anything that's on your mind. So hopefully you're already brainstorming, but feel free to put those in the Q&A at any time. So as Wendy said, a great time to now focus on, if that all sounded great to you, and I hope that it did, the admissions process. What's next? Sounds good. How do I start my process in terms of application? So first of all, you might want to know a little bit about what the MBA for Executives admissions team is looking for. And I think we need to be really clear and intentional about what an executive MBA is. And for us, it is for experienced leaders. It's for folks who are sort of on the cusp of leadership or perhaps already leading, in which the MBA in the executive format specifically makes the most sense. It's also for folks who have already got some demonstrated career evolution. On average, our students have 13 years of work experience, and at the very least, we require 5 years of work experience. We want folks who are at a point in their career where they're accelerating forward and want to use the opportunity to access the resources in a program like ours to continue to move forward and hopefully accelerate into a position of leadership faster than they might have otherwise. So really, this is a lot about timing, a lot about intention, and we'll ask you to talk a lot about that in your application process, both in the essays, and if you're offered an opportunity to interview, in the interview as well. So definitely come ready to tell that story for us. To put a finer point on it, the class of 2022 who started their journey with us just a couple of months ago in July, you can see from this photo all of the precautions that were taken to make sure our students could do so safely and in a healthy manner. But our students came in with a full class. We enroll about 75 students every year. With 13 years of work experience, as I said, on average, about a third are women. About 40% come with advanced degrees, meaning that we've got students who have already taken their education to the graduate level and perhaps are looking for that probably terminal or last degree at this point in their lives. They are coming from all over the US, but from all over the globe as well, representing 16 different citizenships and about 36 years of age. And just to take another closer look at this photo, as you can see, the tools that everybody was using to work through our residency weeks, students were required to wear masks and have their sort of bodies behind the plexiglass. And then you can just see to the left-hand corner there, the zone for the professor. He or she needs to stay in that zone, not only for safety purposes, but also so that the camera can see. As you can tell, not everybody's in the classroom. And there were students who were able to participate fully remotely during the 2 weeks in residence, and then beyond as we started our full every other weekend class schedule. So this is a typical class for us. And if you would like more information about the profile of the class, we have a great number of statistics on our website and a bunch of really great stories on our website about this class, including a really cool one where they talked about their experience in residency, both on campus and remotely. So definitely check that out. Okay, what's the deal, Joanne? How do I move forward into the next steps? As you can see from this slide, our process is quite linear. It's fairly, I think, kind of easy to move through, and we don't hold a whole lot back in terms of secrets or how things go. So this is pretty much it. You will have to submit your application by one of our 3 deadlines. We'll get into that in a second. After you hit that submit button, it does go a little dark. We do then take all of that information and we go into read mode. Thankfully for us, I've lived most of my life in the Northeast or in the Midwest, and it always seems to coincide with the cold weather to hunker down and start reading applications. So I'm looking forward to that. And then we read and read. And then we read a little more, and then we come together as a committee to review each person's application and come to a determination of whether or not that person should move forward to the next phase of the process, which is to be invited to an interview. In normal times, we would like to invite you to campus to conduct your interview. At this time, we're still taking precautions, and so all interviews will take place remotely for round 1, most likely for round 2 and 3 as well, but fingers crossed that things improve a bit. After that, we interview you. It's a pretty robust and full day. Interviews take place not only with a staff member, but with one of our wonderful alumni volunteers as well, and there's a group interview process too. We take all that information, come back to committee to make a final review on your application for admission, and then release decisions to candidates who have applied for admission to that round. At that point, you would either be granted admission, you might be placed on the wait list, or if things don't work out quite the way you hoped, you would be denied admission. So that's the final phase of the process. Before you get there, you got to apply. And so let's just spend a minute talking about the application components. I'm not going to go into too much detail here. We have done, I think, if you don't say so myself, a great webinar about a month ago called our Application Tips webinar, where my colleague and I dove really deeply into each of these elements of the application and gave some insider tips. We can do that now too, but let's see if your questions come through with curiosities about this. But what you see is what you get. These are all the things that we need from you to complete your application. We'll talk a little bit more, again, about things like the GMAT or the transcripts. I'm betting you have questions about that. But again, a fairly straightforward process. Our application deadlines are below here as well. The first deadline is coming up just over a month from now. We'll do some interviews in mid-November and then release final decisions no later than just before the holidays by December 10th. We go through this all over again in round 2 and 3, starting next year in 2021. So mark your calendars now. This is not a rolling admissions process. These are deadlines. After the deadline is over, we go and read your application. If you don't make it for that deadline, we'll just move you into the subsequent deadline after that. Okay, this is the good stuff, right? So we spend about half of our time together just telling you about what you maybe need to know or have been dying to know, but I'd love to be able to answer your questions as well. So this is the time to go ahead and put those in the Q&A. That's probably the best place for you to ask any questions that you might have, and Wendy, I'll ask you to help me with this as we go through. But again, don't be shy. So there's somebody here who has questions about what happens during the 2-week residency.
Yep.
This person's optimistic we won't need it, but what's the contingency plan for Global Network Week in light of the pandemic? And Wendy, I'll ask you to take both of those. What was residency like, or what will it be like? And what about Global Network Week?
Yeah, so residency is actually a really great time for all of our students to come together and bond, to sort of get to know Yale SOM. We're
Hey, Wendy, I know you're struggling a little bit with
doing
technology tonight,
things.
so I'm gonna just take it over for a quick sec. Wendy's in charge of residency, so she's really the best person to talk about this, but I'm happy to jump in for a sec while she gets her connection back. Wendy,
There.
looks like we got you back.
All right, I'll start over.
All right, I know we've all been on Zoom calls where the technology is just not on our side. So let me just do a quick overview of residency, and then when we get Wendy back, I'll ask her to continue. We were lucky enough to have folks in person for residency, and as Wendy was just about to say, it's a great time to start to bond with your entire class. At that point, you'll be broken up into smaller learning teams. So Wendy, it sounded like that's where you were starting from.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yep,
Am I back? Okay, awesome. During residency, we also provide you, you take your foundational classes, the hard skill classes that you're going to need in order to be successful when you kick off the integrated core curriculum. So these are things, basic classes like accounting and statistics and things like that, and economics. Those are sort of the 3 core hard skill classes that's foundational for the rest of the curriculum. So that's what happens during residency. With regards to the Global Network Week, I can tell you what happened this year for our students. In June, because of the pandemic, our students were able to participate in Global Network Week online. And so our Global Network Week is probably slightly different than other international experiences that other schools have. We are a part of a network of schools, about 30 schools across the world. And each schools will offer different content, and the students have the opportunity to choose which content to, where they want to go to, the location, as well as the topic that they would like to learn. And so all of our schools were able to create our, move our content online, and our students were able to participate in that. But they will also have the opportunity to take an in-person Global Network Week this coming June, this next June, if travel is able to be resumed, or within the next 3 years. So we really, we love this global experience. We want our students to be able to have the opportunity to interact with our network schools across the country and build across the world, actually, and build those connections and relationships with their peers, with other executive MBA students from these different countries and schools. And so we really want to make that happen for our students. So as Joanne said, we hope that this is not going to be the case for this next class, that we will actually be able to get back to a place where we can travel and yeah.
Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed that everything we're talking about assumes kind of a return to normal. Wendy, I'm going to give you one more, and then I'm going to take a couple of admissions questions. But
Sure.
Catherine wants to know how frequently students graduate, how many of the students who start with us end up graduating, and then can you talk for a moment about the grading system at SOM, since it's fairly unique?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start there.
Yeah.
We do have our grading system is not a pass-fail grading system. It is a high honors down to a fail, a curved grading system. And so it is a very rigorous program. There is a standard for sort of grading here. That said, we know that the challenges that MBAs have in terms of how many things that they have to juggle. And so our faculty member is extremely accessible and willing to work with students and help them, if they're running issues, as well as providing tutoring and TAs to help students learn the material. And so completion rate, we'd love for there to be perfect completion rates, but there are things that happen in life. As working individuals, people may have a family issue. Given that we're all
Okay, Wendy, I'm going to take it from here just for a sec. And I think where I hear you going with it is time management is a huge thing for our students. And if and when they're not able to complete the program, outside forces can be at play here. Is that where you're going with that?
Absolutely. So, yeah. So yes, absolutely.
Great. Thanks, Wendy. I have a couple here about testing. I knew this was going to be a big topic for discussion, and I see at least 3 different questions here. I'm going to try to answer them, and not rapid fire necessarily, but kind of as a theme. The first is whether or not there's a preference for the GMAT, GRE, or executive assessment. Quick answer to that is no. We want you to take the test that makes the most sense for you based on whatever it is that you have going on in your life. That said, we have seen more EA scores in the last 2 years. We started taking the executive assessment about 3 years ago, then GMAT or GRE scores. We're big fans of the executive assessment. We appreciate not only that it takes into account the fact that we're working with working professionals who have sort of limited time. And so the test itself has been designed not only to meet that need, it is shorter, requires a lot less prep time, but it was also designed very specifically for readiness or to test readiness for an MBA program specifically. So if you have not taken anything yet, we certainly do recommend the EA. If you are not sure if you are going into a different graduate program, or perhaps you're toying with the idea of doing a full-time MBA, you may want to take the GMAT instead. We'll take whatever you give us. It has to be valid, meaning it has to be taken in the last 5 years. And we do recommend that you look for an in-person testing opportunity at this time. This kind of goes along with another question that I see down here about whether or not we waive the test, especially in light of the global pandemic. And the answer is no. That made it really tough for some students at the end of our last round back in March when everything shut down, including testing centers around the globe. GMAC and the ETS went online with remote versions of each of their tests. We heard mixed things, and so definitely would encourage you to start looking into being able to take the test in person, wherever you may be. Hopefully your testing centers have now reopened. With that came, I think, a bit of a decrease in availability because of social distancing requirements. So I definitely would take a look into that almost first to make sure that you are being able to meet our deadlines. But we do not waive the EA, GMAT, or GRE for anybody. Every single person who applies to our program is going to have to take that. Another question that we have here is about the executive assessment specifically and what a competitive score might be. And we really don't think about it so much as a competitive score. We are very intentional in making sure that the test gives us the information that we need to determine if you are going to be ready. Wendy's already talked a couple of times about the rigor of this program. And so between your grades from whatever undergrad and grad you might have done in the past, combined with our most recent information we have about your academic abilities in one of these exams, we're looking for information that can answer the question, can this person be successful here academically? That said, on the EA side of things, a 150 has been sort of industry-wide determined to be a good measure of predicting success in our core curriculum, in our program specifically. And so that's a great goal to shoot for, with a 10 on each of the 3 subsections. That doesn't mean that there aren't plenty of people walking around SOM's MBA program right now who scored a little bit less than that, but that's a good goal to shoot for as you're starting to prepare for taking these exams. And then my last plug for this is that on October 7th, we're going to be hosting a webinar at 8 p.m. with our friend Eric Chambers from GMAC. He's a part of the team that helped to develop the EA, and he'll be talking specifically about the construction of the test, the purpose behind each of the questions, the way that they are created, worded, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the role of testing in the admissions process. But if you haven't already RSVP'd for that, I would definitely recommend it. We have an older version of that on our website now that's recorded. You can watch that whenever you like, but I'll look forward to seeing more of you in October to talk a little bit more with Eric about that. Wendy, that's a great question here about number of years of work experience. Some folks who apply maybe in the 5 to 9 year range versus closer to 13 years. What's your take on somebody who might want to dive into an MBA earlier in their work experience?
Yeah, so I think the average is 13 years. So that means we have people that are on the younger end as well as the older end. And I think with people who have less years of work experience, it's important to show that they're on a trajectory and how this program is going to fit into that, and also how they can contribute to the discussion in the classroom and helping to elevate that. So they're not necessarily at a disadvantage. And I would say this is true for anyone who applies, that they need to be able to demonstrate how they're going to be able to add to the class.
I'll pop back into one more admissions question, which I think is interesting, kind of on timing. Can application materials be submitted sort of whenever? The answer is yes. You might start your application tonight and upload an unofficial transcript, and then make sure you let us know who's going to write your letters of recommendation, but then those come a month from now, right, closer to the deadline. So as long as you've started an application, you can continue to go back, revisit it until you hit the submit button. Once you hit submit, you're out of luck. If anything needs to change on your end, you'll have to email us, and then we can help update your application as necessary. But yeah, please go ahead, open an application, check it out, get familiar with it, and give yourself a better understanding from a time management perspective, what you're going to need to sort of carve out for yourself. Really interesting question here, Wendy. How do you think, or do you think the program has gotten stronger due to the pandemic? And I feel like I have an interesting answer to this, but I wonder what you would say to this. We had so many challenges just finishing up the semester, and then you in particular, of course, worked so hard to make sure that our program could continue on time and then in person. So those are two challenges. But what's your experience been in trying to facilitate all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the program has really shifted because of our ability, because of the fact that we're in a hybrid mode right now. And I think it's allowed us to think of different ways that we can improve the program. We've brought in so many more speakers and workshops and things like that. But just with the core curriculum, because we're in a hybrid format, faculty have offered so many more ways to connect with our students. And in fact, I was speaking with one of our faculty at the end of class weekend on Saturday, and she was saying how nice it is to be able to set up like when she had office hours before, when we were in person, nobody showed up. But now that she has office hours online, there are always 20 or 30 students at these office hours. So it's, and she feels great because it allows her to engage with students much more. So I think you're right. I mean, there are some things that are not ideal in an online environment, but then in other ways, it's really allowed us to sort of improve the program and allow much more access.
Thanks, Wendy. There are 3 questions right in a row here about career services. So I'm wondering if you could talk just generally about resources for students in the program as it relates to careers, what the support is that's offered. And one person asked, which I think is a great question, is it common for students to change jobs in the middle of the program?
It is very common for students to change jobs because I think their organization or others recognize that they are pursuing this degree, and it really adds to what they're able to do. And it's sort of a validation for what they can do and what they will be able to bring to the table. And so it's common for our students not only to get different jobs within their organization, but also move to other organizations as well. We do offer career development services. Our CDO office works with our students. We have a dedicated MBA career person that will work with our students. And must also have access to all of the workshops and recruiting opportunities on campus as well.
Thank you. And I think what I love about our career resources too is that our one dedicated person is so good, and she's there in person, and she's there at coffee breaks, and she's wandering around the halls and really taking an interest in our students. I'll take a couple of quick admissions questions. I realize that we're at our time limit for the webinar. Wendy, are you willing to stick around for another like 5 minutes with me, and we'll answer some more questions? Your questions have been fantastic, so thank you so much for that. One quick question: are all applicants offered an interview? Unfortunately, the answer is no. We interview a subset of the students who apply to each round. We'll let you know within about a week or so whether or not you're moving to the next round of that process. I shouldn't say that, the next phase of our process, which would be the interview. If you're not offered an interview, you may be placed on the wait list as we reconsider your application in a future round, or unfortunately for some, that might be the end of the road for them. So just disappointing, but we would then encourage you to reapply in a future year. Is there a difference in admissions rate or seats available between the rounds? And the answer is mostly no. We really encourage you to apply when you are most ready to be with us. And so if that's round 1, great. If that's round 2, terrific. If that's round 3 and that's your best application, we'll look forward to seeing you then. The difference between the rounds for us, we actually get about the same amount of applications across all 3. But for you, when do you want to know whether or not you're going to be starting in this program? So if you apply in round 1, you'll have the answer to that in December, and you'll have 7 months to really prepare for your start of your program. If you apply in round 2, we sort of contract that a little bit more, and then if you apply round 3, which is in April, you'll have a little less time to kind of get your houses in order to start the program in July. Most years, there's really no difference between rounds. However, if and when in the past we've been lucky enough to be the choice for students, by round 3, we may have fewer spots available in the class and things could get a little bit more competitive. So certainly at this time of year, I would encourage you to be looking toward a round 1 or round 2 application. But again, always with the idea that you should apply when you are most ready and when your application is the strongest that it can possibly be. When you have a good question here about time outside of class, you know, we know how many hours now that students spend inside a class. What would you say on average is the number of hours or the amount of time students are spending doing homework, meeting with group teammates? What would you say that's about, more or less?
Yeah, so we often use the 2 to 3 hours per hour of class, and so that sort of equates to sort of 20 hours or so, you know, over the course of your couple of weeks. So you definitely need to carve out time outside of the class room to study and work with your teams and work on your deliverables.
Yeah.
So it's important to sort of figure out your life before you start the program.
On that note, Wendy, do you mind talking for a moment about this employer approval process? What does a student have to do? And you know, what's the point of making sure employer approval is confirmed?
Yeah, so we really want students to be able to talk to their employers, talk to their team about their pursuit of this program. It's really important because you want them to be supportive of the time that you're going to be away from work, but you also want them to know that you're pursuing this, right? And so that you are able to be considered for other opportunities or growing your skill set. Employer approval doesn't happen until you are invited to an interview. We'll send out that information to your employer at that time. But it really is an opportunity for you to talk to your manager, to your company, to your team about the time that you would be dedicating to this, and also making sure that you're covered, because you know, a year into the program, when you know, when they're talking to you about you know, taking on or spending more time at work, you can then have an opportunity to push back and say, look, we've had this conversation and I'm doing this program. So it also covers yourself.
I agree. There are 2 quick admissions questions I'd like to take, and then we can see if we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more. The time is going by so quickly. So the 2 quick admissions questions are about scholarship, that was the word I'm looking for. And yes, all of our students are considered for both merit and need-based scholarship at the time of admission. The great thing for you is you don't have to do anything extra. We will determine your eligibility and competitiveness for the limited scholarship offers that we have available at the time of admission. And so that's something that really doesn't have to lie too much with you. We'll take care of it and let you know at the time that you've been admitted or shortly thereafter. And then somebody asked about having full sponsor for tuition improve your chances for acceptance. Absolutely not. We see very few of those. I think the golden age of being employer sponsored is over. So we see these occasionally. We don't really even ask about it in the application process. So no, that would not impact anything. Wendy, I think for our last question, there's a couple sort of that have a similar theme, and in this day and age, we're talking a lot about more women in the program, more diversity generally in the program, and we were lucky enough to have a meeting with staff today that included our Dean, Dean Kerwin Charles, talking a lot about our initiatives as it relates to making sure that we are not only a diverse community, but that we are supporting and we are the best allies that we can be to our students who identify from underrepresented populations. For me, one of these groups that's important to me is women. We have 31% women in the group right now, which is fantastic. We'd of course love to see more. We have seen more in the past, and so we're working really hard not only with our current female students and alumni to see how they can refer students to our program, introduce us to their employers who are also trying to be more thoughtful about how we can get more women into positions of leadership. More specifically, we are sponsors of Forte. So if you know nothing about Forte, I would highly encourage you to hop on their website right this second. Forte is an organization that exists as a consortium of organizations, including corporate partners and school partners. We've just launched a newer initiative specifically for executive education and executive MBA women. And I absolutely encourage you to take a look at that. We're going to be hosting a live webinar with one of our female faculty, Professor Marissa King, in December in partnership with Forte. And so please do hop on their website and take advantage of all the great resources that are there. Wendy, is there anything else you'd like to add to that when we think about how we are thinking about issues of diversity and allyship at SOM, generally speaking?
Yeah, no, Joanne, I think you've done a great job talking about our various efforts, but also, you know, there's a lot of conversation and dialogue happening at the school with each other, also with our deans. Dean Charles is going to be teaching a class in the fall around diversity and race and discussions based on his research. And so it is definitely a topic that we actively want to have a dialogue about. And I think Dean Charles said this morning, you know, that we can make a change if we start the conversation here and make the change within the school first, right? And that's exactly what we do when we look at the students that recruit the diversity of the class that we bring in, and making sure that we have all voices represented.
Thank you, Wendy. We probably have 5 or 6 that we are probably not going to get to, but I thank you so much for asking these really important questions specifically. We definitely want to talk about the EA and things like that, but thank you for bringing up these really topical opportunities for conversation that we're having internally, that our students are having. And though we'll have to end our webinar, I'm sure you're eager to either get to bed or maybe go back to work. We definitely want to continue the conversation. So we'd love for you to do a pre-assessment if you haven't already. That's a great opportunity to, at the very baseline, determine whether or not there's eligibility for our program, and then we can give you some next steps to continue the conversation with us. Generally speaking, this emoji in the middle or this graphic in the middle would lead you to believe we're bringing visitors to campus. So we'll just call it a virtual representation of what we're doing now, which is we're hosting a ton of webinars moving forward. We've got even more on our website recorded for you to peruse and watch at your own pace. Hopefully we can invite you to campus one of these days, but for now, we've got that great webinar coming up on the executive assessment. We'll be partnering with Ivy Exec to bring a faculty, our second of 3 faculty webinars with Professor Kelly Hsu at the end of October. Our financial aid director, Rebecca, will be hosting a financial aid webinar with us on November 11th. lots coming up, so please keep an eye on our website. And I did see somebody say, hey, can we talk to somebody? Yes, you're welcome to email us at the email address below. If there's a good opportunity to put you in touch with a student or alum, we're happy to do that as well as the situation is appropriate. Wendy, any last parting words, thoughts, or pieces of advice before we wrap up here?
No, we're just so glad that you were able to join us and to learn more about the program. I think maybe one piece of parting advice is that, don't wait until the last minute. Get as much information as you possibly can. Learn about the program. Our program is very unique and different than most MBA programs out there. So make sure that this is what you want to do, and this is the right fit for you.
I agree, Wendy.
What about you, Joanne?
Yeah, same. I think when I think about sort of parting advice, time is never on our side when we seem to get excited and get closer to the application deadline. So I would say, invest in yourself at this point and really take the opportunity to map this out, whether you're going to apply a month from now, a year from now, or something in between. I think we're talking a lot about self-care these days, and I think this is a kind of in that vein of, this is what I really want to do. Here's what my goals are. I identified this as my next step in my career, my education. Take the time to sit down and map this out so that you are doing it in a way that doesn't feel super stressful, that feels like you're giving not only yourself plenty of time, but those in your circle plenty of time, whether that's your letter of recommendation writers, your employer approval, your family, your friends. I think I'll end on the note of support and cheerleader. Find the folks in your life who are really excited by this opportunity that you're giving yourself, and get them on board. Get them to be your cheerleader through this process. Support is the way that this gets done successfully. So find those folks now, let them in on the big secret that you're considering an MBA program, and gather those folks round. It's such an important part of the program, I think, to have support. So time management and support, I'd love to end on those notes. And to thank you all again. I hope you remain safe and healthy, and the same goes for your families as well. Thank you for sticking around a little bit of extra time for us so we could answer all these great questions. Thanks to Alexandra on the back end. Wendy, thank you for joining me tonight. And we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. And if you have any questions, you know where to find us, mba.admissions@yale.edu. Thanks again. Have a great night, everybody.